Hey guys, welcome back to the shop. It's a Friday. It's a Friday. So today, yesterday I did not get to any rough grinding of blades. I think I usually overestimate what I can get done in an amount of time. Anyway, so that'll give me an opportunity to talk about that a little bit, so we'll get into that. But before I do that, I think I'm going to go ahead and make a sheath real quick for that puukko knife that I built. That's the video on several videos back. I need to make a sheath for it. It's sold and I need to get that out the door. So let's go ahead into the leather room and get started on that. It's chilly today still. Whew. Fortunately I got a heater up in here, so yeah, so a closer look at this knife. It's a Damascus steel on both sides of the blade, and then a layer of pure nickel, and then the 1095 high carbon steel core where the edge is, obviously. And so that billet that we've been working on the last couple days, it's going to be the outside layer as on this knife for some sand my blades. That's the plan. So, and then it has a Damascus steel butt cap on there. That's kind of pretty cool. And this is desert ironwood, mesquite, and then brass carbon fiber bolster. Yeah, I really like how this turned out. I really enjoyed this build. I'm excited to. I'm gonna make some more puukko style blades because it's just cool. I just like it. So anyway, first thing I got to do is make a pattern for this and go from there. So folding it in half like that, it allows you to get it symmetrical, so it's it's not lopsided. So this one is the welt, and I'm just gonna use the knife as a template and so now that I have this all cut out, I need to finish all these edges that are going to be exposed that are not on the stitched portion. So I'm just going to use my edging tool to knock off the corner first. So now that the dye is dried, pretty well. Go ahead and put some of this, it's called tokonol. It's a Japanese product. It's some kind of plant gum or something, but it's what allows you to really slick down edges and make them nice and burnished. I suppose you could do that without this, but it would be take a lot longer, I think. A lot more difficult. I'll let this soak in for a minute, and then I'll wipe off the excess and then use the burnishing tool. But I found if you have too much of that conditioner or whatever on it, it just kind of smears around. It doesn't. What you want it to do is get a little bit tacky and kind of sticky, and that's what really makes all the leather fibers lay down nicely and polish it up. So okay, so now it's time to sew the belt loop on, and I have enough length here to bring the strap up a little bit, which I do want to do because I want the sheath to hang just above the butt or the top of the knife, and that way when you're wearing it on your belt, it's not gonna dig into your side or whatever like it might otherwise. So just using this as a gauge a little bit to see where that's going to sit. Bring that strap up a little more. There, let that set, and we can go ahead and sew that. See, I did it again. I forgot about the bobbin that was on here winding, and kept winding up onto the spindle here, so got a little extra. Just gonna go ahead and cut that off. It's really not worth trying to put back on the spool. Okay, so we're ready to glue the welt onto the pieces of knife sheath. Go ahead and let that dry for a minute, sit up, and then we can mark out where the stitching is going to go. I'm going to use a straight edge to mark out where the stitching is going to go, because the edges of the leather, it's not as straight as it could be, and I don't want to transfer this line onto the stitch line because it's not straight. So I'm just going to use this to mark at the top right here on this run And then right here, that way I can run it straight down. There we go. Okay, knife sheath is done. So once it dries out a little bit more, I'll go ahead and put some leather oil on it, but now it is time to grind some knives, some blades. Alright, let's do it. So the first tip I can give you on grinding blades is use a fresh, sharp belt. This will make it much easier to get good, straight, level, or true grinds on your blade. Some guys use a jig. You know, I don't use a jig. It probably takes more practice to get good results without a jig. But you know, both are legitimate ways of grinding a blade. So I'm gonna put a fresh belt on this, and then we'll start grinding some bevels. So what am I using for a belt? Well, you know, I've tried a lot of different belts, and everybody has their favorite. But currently, one of my favorites is 40 grit Cubitron ceramic belt by 3M. It's just a great belt. You know, they're not cheap. They're not the cheap belts, but they hold up well. Some of the other heavier grit belts tend to not hold up so well. When you have the larger abrasive pieces or particles, a lot of times they'll just pull out of the belt bonding or whatever and not work so good. But these ones are really good, and you know, you use it for applications where you need it to be sharp, but even after it gets a little dull, it has a lot of life left in it, and I'll use it for cleaning up steel for Damascus billets, and then handles and stuff like that. Okay, so I have this little puukko inspired blade rough ground, and so let's talk a minute about what it is you're looking for in a rough grind. So as I mentioned a minute ago, the main reason I rough grind is so that my normalizing and thermocycles can happen as efficiently and effectively as possible, because there's not going to be all that extra steel retaining the heat, which becomes more important, in my opinion, the thicker your steel stock gets. Also, I can run through my normalizing and thermocycles and then go right to hardening without doing a finish grind. I could do a finish grind, but it's not necessary because this is thin enough to have some good heat. It's 1/16 of an inch thick. Some good heat oh, what's the word? It'll quench appropriately fast in the oil, so I don't have to worry about that. It's thin enough to do that. If I were to leave this stock, which I don't, but if you were to leave this stock full thickness of 1/8 inch thick, on some steels you start running into not getting your blade hardened where it needs to be all the way through. This is 80 CRV2, which is kind of a deep hardening steel, so that probably wouldn't be an issue on this, but that's beside the point. So what are you looking for in a rough grind? Well, the first thing is evenness, for a couple reasons. First of all, during your normalizing cycles, even heating and even cooling are very important for those heat treatments to be effective. And if you have a irregular distribution of stock on your blade due to uneven grinding, that's going to minimize the effectiveness and just the good effects of your normalizing cycles. So that's important. Also, the better job you do now on the rough grind, it's going to set you up for success on the finish grind. It's just going to make it a lot easier. So taking the time to get that even. So what do I look for? So first of all, you want to have the same thickness of your rough ground edge all the way down, or really close to it. And this is 1/16 of an inch. Secondly, things to look for is this unground portion here is an indicator of how far you've ground your bevel on the blade. So that ends right here. It needs to end on the same spot, at the same spot on the other side of the blade. That's one indicator of even grinding on both sides. Same thing with right here. As you get into the ricasso, if your knife has a ricasso, that needs to be even on both sides. You want to have your edge running down the center of your piece of steel, and so these plunge lines should be equal on both sides. Additionally, looking at the blade this way, looking down on the spine, you can see the bevel is the same length, or very close to the same length on each side, and that's important. That's another indicator of evenness of grind going into heat treatment. And then finally, looking at the blade point on, that point should be, and I'm not 100% perfect right there, that point should be in the center line of the blade, and then you can look at the bevels running off like that and see the evenness or equalness there. And like I say, it doesn't, looking through the camera right here, I can't tell, but it might be a tiny bit off, but it's close enough to definitely to be adequate for the rough grind. So and this is all eyeball measurements. If you can see it out, then it's probably not I mean, I would fix it if at all possible, and I'm not going to take the calipers to this or anything like that. Some guys do, and that's fine, but at this point in the game, that's what I'm looking for. And so that's what I'm going to do with the rest of the blades, and then they will all be, most of them at least, will be ready for the first normalizing cycles. Okay, I have 9 of my 14 blades rough ground, and it's time to change the grinding belt. It still feels sharp, and it still has quite a bit of abrasive left on it, but it's to the point where it's really easy to start getting uneven grinds because it's not cutting. It's not cutting like it was. And so once that starts happening, you're having to apply more pressure. You just change the belt and keep going. This belt, like I say, it still has a lot of abrasive on it. So what happens is, as you use an abrasive belt, the abrasive particles chip or break apart, exposing new sharp edges. and that's how the belt wears as it goes. But the steel that I'm grinding is all spheroidized, softened in a softened state prior to heat treating, and so it grinds pretty easily, but it does not generally as much have the ability to break down the abrasive particles and continue exposing new edges quite like steel that's a little harder. Of course, the steel that's a little harder is going to wear your belt out because it's harder, so I don't know if it's a huge difference either way. But the point is that I can take this belt, and it's still got a lot of use in it for you know, cleaning up steel for Damascus billets, or you know, rough grinding those forged blades, which are not spheroidized. They're a pearlitic structure, so a little harder. So there's still a lot of life in this belt, like I was talking about earlier. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and change it out and finish these 4 more blades and put a big dent in it, and then next week we'll start heat treating some of these, so it'll be good. Alright guys, that's it for today. I got the whole batch rough ground and ready for normalizing and heat treating going forward, so keep plugging away on that next week. Yeah, have a good weekend, and thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next video.